One item that I first noticed about Macro Express was if you have a whole bunch of hotkeys, how do you merge all those items together so that you don't have to memorize a whole bunch of hotkeys? Well, menus is the answer to that. To create a menu, I've gone ahead and created 3 different macros: item 1, item 2, and item 3. The 2 different menu options is a pop-up menu and a floating menu. There are many differences between the 2 menu types. The concept behind a floating menu is similar to that of a floating toolbar. A floating menu remains active after picking something from it, but a pop-up menu will disappear until it is reactivated from either a macro, the system tray, or a hotkey. Since a floating menu remains active and showing, there is no reason to place it in the system tray or even display its list in the Windows default style. It is globally available, so it cannot be scoped to a particular window or program, and since it floats on top of every window or desktop, it can be dragged anywhere. There's no placement coordinates for it. So what's the reason for menus anyway? Well, if you have 3 items, you don't want to have a hotkey for each individual item. You'd rather just have those in one list where you can press one hotkey or always have it on top of your desktop. And this is the reason why they develop menus. To create a menu, you go through the same steps as adding a new macro. Right-click in the right task pane and click New Macro. Rather this time, instead of selecting a hotkey or schedule or short key or window title, we're going to select a floating menu or a pop-up menu. Now, depending on what you're planning to do with the macro files will depend on which kind of menu you choose. So if you can spare the desktop space or the application space, I would use a floating menu because then you don't have to press a hotkey every time to activate the window. However, if you're constrained on desktop space, you might want to go with a pop-up menu. Once you choose which menu you would like to use, simply select it and click Build Menu. Now, you'll probably get a prompt like this unless you've already selected a hotkey. If you're generating a floating menu, you don't need a hotkey. However, with the pop-up menu, you do. So once you decide which hotkey you want, simply press OK and select on your keyboard which buttons you would like to use. Or, of course, you can scroll down here and select a button. So I'm going to go with Alt-1. So our next step is to click the Build Menu button. So now we have to add items to this menu. So simply select the item that you want first and hit Insert. And then select the item that you want next and hit Insert. And then the next item and hit Insert. Well, that's not the order that we quite wanted. So what we can do is select item 2 and click the Up button, and now it reorganizes my menu. Let's go ahead and go to the Properties tab, and we can nickname our menu. So let's just say Item Menu. From here, if we press Alt-1, actually we have to save our menu first and then press Alt-1, we can now see the item menu that has been created. However, it doesn't really give us a description of each one until we hover over each individual icon. So the other option that we have is by using the first part of the macro, the nickname and scope, or the Windows default. My favorite option is the Windows default. I'm going to select that and hit Save. Now when I press Alt-1 on my keyboard, you'll notice that my menu is kind of a drop-down style. If I could click Cancel and then press Alt-1 again, it will come back up. Each option definitely has its advantages. The icons only is quite a bit smaller than the rest of the options. The first part of the macro will show you what's kind of going on in the macro file itself, and the nickname and scope, of course, will show you the name and also when the macro file can run. You also have a couple of other options. If you place the menu in the system bar, this means that when I save it, it will now display down in my system bar. And I can also change the icon by clicking Change, and if I want to select an icon that's not listed, I can simply click Browse. From here, if I have a specified icon that I want to use, or I want to use one of the icons that's included with Macro Express, I can go into the Icons folder and select an icon that I would like to use. Once I select that, I'm just going to press OK, and if I press Save again, you'll notice that my icon down in my system bar has now changed. The other option that you still have with menus is Scope, so that you can specify when and when not the menu will run, or which applications it will run in and which ones it won't run in. The other final item is Notes, which allows you to make notes about the different items, so you can type whatever you wanted in here for personal reference. One other note about menus is you can only have a maximum of 36 items listed in your menu. If you have more than that, it will give you an error displaying that you have 36 items. Let's say that after you develop your menu, you want to change the type of menu from, say, a pop-up menu to a floating menu. Well, you can actually do that pretty easily. If you go back into the Macro Explorer and you right-click on your menu and go to Properties, you can then select which one you would like to change the item into, say a floating menu. And then pressing OK will now change that into a floating menu. Now you probably noticed that the item menu has been grayed out. And the reason why that is when we changed it to a floating menu, that menu must stay active, and if we close that menu out, it disables the macro.